So we have a couple of moments here, a little bit more time. I wanted to kind of just ask you guys questions. We're going to popcorn it and talk through this because I think there's some more things that we can kind of deal with and talk through that our students would want to hear about. And so I'm going to start this off, and I'm going to ask this question. What is the question that we did not ask you tonight that you think is important that students are dealing with, right? So what is the thing we didn't necessarily get a chance to address tonight that you'd be like, this is something that students should be mindful of? And so I'll open it up to see whoever wants to go first with that.
I'll jump in.
Okay.
The question that I wish you would have asked for our students is, how do I know who to go to? Because I have the tendency to, go to my friends, but how do I know if my friend is, I know they're my friends, but how do I know if they're healthy or unhealthy? Because I really just want friends. And so that would have been the question that I wished you would have asked, because that would have led me to respond in a deeper conversation about, we all have friends, but what do your friends do for you as far as emotions go when you are away from them? So let's say you and I connected, right? We had coffee together. When we leave, do I feel positive about myself? Do I feel negative about myself?
That's so good.
And that's not that I'm going to cut you out, but I might need to monitor that. So if I'm already in a poor position and I go to you for some advice and I generally feel negative, I'm going to feel lower. And I think our students need to know that they have a circle of friends, but which ones do you go to for which response are you looking for?
That's good, because I know I have friends who are just co-signers, right? Like I have friends who I know I'm gonna go to them and be like, I can't believe they do that. And they did what? Right? They're just gonna jump on board with me. But I have friends who are honest with me, and I need that in my life. And that's so true. We need people in our life who will be open and honest with us and that we can trust, that we can go to and get good, not just good, but godly advice in our life from them. So that's great. I'm gonna open it up again. Questions or a subject that you think that students should also be mindful in this season.
I think I would flip the question, and I wish that as a student, I talked more about what I was walking through.
Wow.
And I wish that I had mentors in my life who didn't just want to preach to me new content, but really wanted to listen and just share what I was walking through.
That's so good. Would you consider yourself a little bit more introverted or a little bit more extroverted?
I'm like right down the middle.
Right in the middle.
I'm situational.
What do you think would be some of the things that deterred you from opening up in those moments?
Being with a mentor who could actually listen right and thinking, this guy doesn't want to hear from me, he just wants to talk about what he has on his mind, or he was just listening to respond. He wasn't trying to understand me.
That's so good. I think there's so many times we're in conversations with people and they say something and we're just ready for a response and ready to jump in, and it really becomes us monopolizing the conversation rather than genuinely having our hearts open to listen to them. I think that's so good. And I would say, if you're a student who maybe feels like you haven't been able to open up, I would encourage you to take those first steps to begin to talk to, and then to have tenacity. So when you take those first steps and it doesn't work, and maybe you're like, I've tried this before, it hasn't worked, can I encourage you to just have the tenacity to take it again, or try someone new, or look for these different friends that Miss Bonnie Jo has been talking about? So I think that's such a critical point, to step out ourselves and reach out to others. That's good. All right. Last one.
Well, he kind of touched on it a little bit, but I think growing up in the church, I always felt, maybe I'm not a Christian if I'm struggling. Maybe I don't have enough faith. Maybe God has left me. And so I would really encourage students to not believe that lie, because it is a lie. That's Satan saying, let's hang out together in isolation. You are not a believer if you're going through anything that's ungodly. And that's not true, because God made our brains. The Lord even calls himself Wonderful Counselor. And so we can reach out to people like that, counselors. And it doesn't mean that we're less of a Christian, or we believe less, or we have less faith. But that would have really helped me growing up.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And that stigma of I think it's both in. I think there's maybe some church hurt there, where many of us are we've had leaders who've been like, no, you can't talk about you just need to pray more, you just need to, right? And we've had maybe not even church hurt, just well-meaning people in our life that are like, you're not depressed, or if you're depressed, go eat a Snickers bar. Like
Yeah.
people say these dumb things that are kind of like, hey, if I could get rid of depression, I would get rid of depression. But the truth is, when we're going through this moment, we need to know that we need to normalize it. We need to know that we can reach out to other people as well.
I would say we didn't choose our trauma, but we can choose how to respond to it.
Yeah.
Dang, that's good. We didn't choose our trauma, but we can choose how to respond to it. And trauma are these moments that are like unexpected wow moments in our life that just take us back. And it could be something that may not even be traumatic to other people.
Little T trauma.
But is traumatic to you and significant enough in your life. You don't get to choose those things all the time, but you can choose how to respond to it and how. Wow, that's really good.
And to take that even further, students, who's controlling you? You know, and ask that question to yourself. Who's in control? Is it yourself, your thoughts, or is it the person who hurt you? Are you allowing what they did to you to dictate your life? Because I promise you, you don't want that person to control you. You want to be in control. And the great thing is God's given us the ability in our minds to reshape and our thoughts to reframe our thinking, and you can be in control of your thoughts.
And I think we have to remember too, there is an element of evil too, and evil is going to try to push us not only into the isolation, but fill our heads with thoughts that lead to death and destruction. Because that's the John 10:10, right? So I'm not making anything up, right? Evil is present. Do we run in fear all the time? No, we have to learn how to manage our fear and anxiety. But evil is still present, and there is still voices that are pushing you to move in a destructive way. And I think the discernment of learning how to handle that is super important for our students to understand.
That's true. You cannot avoid the fact that there is a genuine enemy that does not want you to win. That is, wants you to be so entangled by past hurts and wounds that you can't look forward into where you're going in life. And so I think that is so critical. I also think controlling is so important. I think specifically emotions is something that this generation deals with and doesn't know how to really lead in that sense. And one of the things that I recently heard from my therapist is this idea that emotions are more of an indicator. So imagine you're driving a car and there's like you need gas. They're an indicator in your life. So you can't judge your emotions, and you shouldn't be like, that's a bad your emotions are telling you something about your life, right? They're saying like, hey, maybe you're still struggling with this. But many times we allow our emotions to control us instead, where we say, well, I'm just angry, so I'm just gonna live angry for the rest of my life, and it controls us. Would you mind speaking to emotions, the importance of emotions, and how we should have a correct relationship with our emotions?
I always say, if we don't talk it out, we act it out. So if you're starting to act kind of crazy, maybe there's something you should be talking about.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, if we're not mindful of our emotions lead us into what our thought process is, which also ultimately leads us into what our behavior will become. And before too long, we're acting out in a certain way. Like if you're always yelling at your parents, if you're always angry at the drop of a dime, the truth is there may be something a little bit deeper in there that you need to be talking about. Anyone else about emotion?
Yeah, I would basically say, first of all, emotions were created by God.
Yeah,
okay, and like you said, they are indicators. I love the movie Inside Out because it helps you to kind of understand all the characters of anger and fear, and again, not be controlled by them. You are controlled by the Holy Spirit and the Holy Spirit alone. But when we have emotions, we have to honor what they're trying to say and then be obedient to getting the help that we need to help that emotion have its say, but not let it control us.
Yeah, so good. Anyone else on that part? Yeah, I think that is true. I think the emotions that we go through and that we experience, right? Because we can't always control our emotions, but we get sometimes hit by these emotions. They are these moments in which we can say, I will acquiesce to that and live my whole life by that emotion, or I will be in charge of that and allow the Holy Spirit to tell me and give me the discernment I need in that moment to live correctly or to make the right decision there. The last question I want to ask you about is about social media. Because statistics are showing that before it was an inordinate amount of time that we were spending on social media, but since COVID, it's gone above and beyond. And with that comes the struggle, with that comes affirmation issues, with that comes lots of things. And so if we can just talk about social media and the effect on students and how they should handle it well, I think that'd be a great topic to talk about.
I mean, studies are showing over and over again that the more you're on social media, the more depressed you're going to be, the more anxious you're going to be, and the more suicidal you'll be. Because that constant comparison of life, if you wake up every morning and the first thing that you see is this person has something that I don't, then that's going to control your day.
Wow.
And if you're constantly going back to that and seeing that, if you're spending 8 hours or 5 hours a day on Instagram or Facebook, then you're going to start, that's going to become your identity of who you are. You're going to start modeling that behavior on yourself.
Wow, so what we see and what we interact with on social media can ultimately affect how we view ourselves and our personal identity, because that comparison feel and that moment of like, I desire that, why am I not that? Even though we all treat social media the same, right? It's highlight reels.
Yeah.
It's not the real of our life. It's like, the things that we put on, like, this is a perfect meal, but you've been eating ramen noodles for the last week and now you finally got yourself some steak. Like it affects us. I think that's good.
I don't wake up and post a selfie every morning. Like, I post a selfie when I look nice and whatever, but I don't think other people do the same. So I'm comparing my everyday to people's highlight reels.
Wow.
And if I'm doing it as an adult and a mental health professional, I can't imagine other people doing it.
That's great. That's great.
I'm going to go in a different direction. I think if we cut it out altogether or ask our kids to cut it out altogether, we're increasing their anxiety and depression, because we're asking them to walk in a world where everybody else is doing that. And I'm older than y'all, so I can equate this to television back in the day.
Okay.
Or even, R-rated movies and PG. It's like once you pull something out, you're going to immediately draw that behavior to it. So be careful with that. I think it's like anything else. We have to monitor our weight, we monitor our words, we monitor so many things. So let's teach our children how to monitor social media. Let's teach it. It's a neutral entity. So let's teach it. How can we make it positive, and when does it turn negative?
That's great.
And it's a balancing act.
Yeah, and I think in that becomes this conversation we've kind of had about self-awareness. Like, you have to be mindful of yourself enough, this meta-analysis of yourself, so not just where you are in the moment, but thinking about what you're doing in that moment, and to be able to say, why do I feel a certain way about this one post?
Yes.
And then how is my behavior going to change because of this post? And so instead of cutting it out, I think, like you're saying, we need to be mindful of how we behave and how we respond and act in those moments. And so, but that is going to come with us being able to know ourselves well enough to be in conversation with the Holy Spirit. This is really cool thing that happens is like you are not just your flesh, you're your flesh and your soul and your spirit, right? And so as you're experiencing something fleshly, like as you're touching something or as you're looking at something or experiencing something, you have that, but you can also have your spirit talking to the Holy Spirit at the same time, saying, why am I feeling this way? And as you begin to exercise those muscles of self-analysis and awareness, I think it helps you make better choices. And when you get hit with these feelings of maybe jealousy or anxiety, maybe someone's saying negative things about you on social media, I think it really does help you to respond better, outwardly and inwardly. So that's great. I'm so thankful for the time we got to spend with each other, and I will be calling each and every one of you in my life to be like, hey, what do you do with this? So thank you so much. We hope that you guys have been enjoying having some of the behind the scenes and some more conversation about this.
Yeah.